Hi, I'm Chris Roberts, and in this series titled Supremacy and Suffering, we will be taking a walk through the book of Job. Often cited as the oldest book of the Bible, we take a look at God's divine word in an attempt to comprehend a good and sovereign God in a world filled with pain and sorrow. Here we will look into a question that mankind has asked since he has been on the earth. Why do people suffer? Hello, beloved, and here we are back with our talk through the book of Job, where last time we finished off, Job finished the second part of his speech and his response to the words of his friend Bildad. The first one was a direct response to Bildad, and then the last chapter, chapter 7, that we went through, was Job's cry out to God, where Job laments his existence. He asks for God to just go ahead and take his life, and Job even asks the question in his suffering and in his anguish, have I become a burden to God? I talked about the translation and how even the Hebrew writers had issue with this, to the point that many of them may have translated it off as I become a burden to myself, although the Septuagint, which most likely had a more accurate and better Hebrew text to go off of, it does indeed state, Job says, have I become a burden to you? Now here we'll be starting with chapter 8, starting at verse 1, where now Bildad, the Shuhite, will speak. And we already talked about Bildad and his background. Remember, Bildad, Dad, Bel, the Lord, and then Dad, loved. So the Lord loved. Although Bel is the title for a false god that is worshipped in the Old Testament, it may very well be that Bel, kind of like Adonai, in some instances just refers to a lord, a ruler, or a one who has dominion over others. And so Bel, probably in this archaic ancient time, probably before worship of Bel and these other false Canaanite deities was established, Bel may have simply just referred to God. So we'll go ahead and start at verse 1 of chapter 8. Then Bildad the Shuhite answered, how long will you speak these things, and the words of your mouth be like a strong wind? Does God pervert justice? Or does the Almighty pervert justice? If your children sinned against him, he cast them away for their transgression. If you yourself would seek God earnestly, and seek favor from the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would rouse himself on your behalf, and he would prosper your righteous dwelling. Though your beginning was small, your end will increase greatly. Please, ask the former generation, and prepare yourself for what their fathers searched out. For we were born but yesterday and know nothing, because our days on earth are a shadow. Will they not teach you and tell you, and bring forth words out of their heart? Can the papyrus grow up without a marsh? Can the reed grow without water? While it is yet green and not cut down, it withers before any other plant. So are the paths of all who forget God, and the hypocrite's hope will perish, whose confidence will be cut off, and whose trust will be a spider's web. He will lean upon his house, but it will not stand. He will hold it fast, but it shall not endure. He is green before the sun, and his branch shoots forth in its garden. His roots are wrapped around the rock heap, and he sees the place of stones. If he is uprooted from his place, then it will deny him, saying, I have not seen you. See, this is the joy of his way, and out of the ground others will grow. Surely God will not cast away a perfect man, nor will he strengthen the evildoers, until he fulfills your mouth with laughing, and your lips with rejoicing. Those who hate you will be clothed with shame, and the dwelling place of the wicked will come to nothing. All right, continuing on through Job. So Job cried out to God, and Bildad comes out and answer. Now, straight off the back, we saw that Eliphaz, he was a little more gentle, he was a little more loving, he was a little more caring, trying to get Job to understand that it's because you've sinned and this is why this is happening to you. Commit yourself to the Almighty. He'll raise you up. He'll heal you. He'll restore you. He's a God of mercy. This is not Bildad at all. Nowhere in Bildad's words do we see a hint of comfort. Nowhere in Bildad's words do we sense that he wants to provide for Job to kind of ease the pain and the sorrow that he's enduring here. Now, Bildad obviously loves Job. He's obviously his friend. He came here, after all. He sat in silence for 7 days and 7 nights and didn't say a word to suffer with his friend. But at hearing Job's words, Bildad just outright completely condemns Job. How long will you speak these things, and the words of your mouth be like a strong wind? Job, you're just an airbag. You're out here talking, saying all these words, but there's no substance to what you have to say. Your words are like the wind. The winds, they go in their currents and their circles and their cyclones that God has ordained out throughout the earth, and their patterns and their circuits, and they're just here and then they go there. You're all over the place, Job. You're just talking. Bildad doesn't take into account the pain and the sorrow that Job is feeling that has led him to say the words that he's saying. And then verse 3, does God pervert judgment, or does the Almighty pervert justice? Job, we see here, Bildad's theology is even more black and white and more strict than Eliphaz's was. As far as Bildad is concerned, God gives good things to good people, and God judges bad people for doing bad things. You're receiving bad things, Job, so you're a bad person. Otherwise, God is perverting judgment, and he's perverting justice, and God does not do that. In verse 4, Bildad goes even further. So Bildad isn't just, he doesn't have this view or this belief system on the surface. This is deep down to the very bones of who he is, even to the point of going at Job's children, whom Job loved, the symbol of his strength. Now remember, in chapter 1, we know that Job is a righteous man, and that Job even offered sacrifices that God accepts on behalf of Job's children, just in case they were to sin. If Job's children ever committed sin in their hearts, not even overtly, here is the righteous father offering sacrifices to God on his behalf, so that the bull, so that the ox, so that the lamb, or whatever other animal that was ordained could die and suffer the wrath that his children deserved on their behalf. Job is a righteous man who loves his children, has already taken this into account. But as far as Bildad says, if your children sinned against him, he cast them away for their transgression. Job, your children clearly sinned against God, and this is evidenced by the fact that they died. This was from the hand of God. Verse 5, if you yourself would seek God earnestly and seek favor from the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would rouse himself on your behalf, and he would prosper your righteous dwelling. Job, you are not pure, and you're not upright. You're not a righteous man. He just comes out and says it strictly, because if you were to do so, God would rouse yourself. He would rouse himself for you. And Bildad, he's wrong, but he's right to a degree, because God does rouse himself on behalf of the righteous. Now, the issue here that what Bildad doesn't know is that God has already roused himself on behalf of Job in the heavenly realm before his angels, and he's going to do it before Job's friends as well here in the future. But Bildad doesn't know that yet, of course. And then, of course, he's saying if you would just earnestly seek God, if you were pure and upright, surely now he would rouse for you. But this isn't empty advice here. Job is lost. Job is destitute. Job is alone, and those who have come to comfort him have aligned themselves as his enemy. Well, if I were you, I would earnestly seek God. That's kind of the equivalent to the cheer up. Look on the bright side, if you will, but there's no bright side right now. Job is in awful pain, and he's considered that God is shooting me with his poison arrows. God has made me his enemy. What bright side is there if my God has rejected me? What bright side is there? Now, moving on to the next verse, in verse 7, though your beginning was small, your end will increase greatly. Like, if you would just do that, don't you see that God will reward you and he'll bless you with all these things? Kind of similar to some of the prosperity, those false prosperity gospels that we see. Now, God is a rich God. He owns the universe. Psalm 50, the cattle on 1,000 hills are his. Every bird of the forest belongs to God. All the reptiles, every creature, it belongs to God. He is rich in power and in glory and in riches and mercy. And God does bless us with wealth. We saw Job was blessed with wealth and a great estate and a great name. But it's not a guarantee that we will be blessed in this manner for following God and being righteous. Here we see the righteous man Job suffering. We see Messiah was utterly perfect and utterly sinless, and he was poor. He lived as a traveler. He had nowhere for himself to lay his head. As Jesus said, the Son of Man has no place where he can lay his head. So we ought not think such things. We thank God for the blessings that he's given us in this great nation. We thank him for the provisions that he's made for us. But we also have to understand that these things are not a guarantee, and that being blessed materially doesn't necessarily mean that we're righteous. And not being blessed materially doesn't mean that we aren't righteous. It's a gift from God that God can give and God may will to take away. In verse 8, please ask the former generation and prepare yourself for what their fathers searched out. So here Bildad is appealing to the ancient wisdom of their ancestors. Think of the elders, those who came before us. They'll know. Look at what they have to say on this. Inquire about the former age and you'll discover, because we were only born yesterday and we don't know anything. Our days on earth, they're just a shadow. Remember a shifting shadow. Shadows move based off where your relation is to the light, and as you move, the shadow moves with you. It's here right now, but then you turn and the light spectrum changes and boom, it's gone. We're here and we're gone. So we got to go to the ancient wisdom of those who have come before us. As Smick said in his own commentary, I'll quote here, quote, if Job would only take the time to consider ancient tradition, he would find that God only does right. Sinners get just punishment, and good men are blessed with health and prosperity. End quote. This is this isn't just ancient tradition. These are the views and the belief systems of many, and it's a very easy concept to understand. I mean, think about it. God does bless us for doing good things, and God does bring judgment on the wicked. But to make it an end-all, be-all, 100% of the time, this is how it goes here in this life. It's just disregarding what we see in Scripture, and it disregards what we see here in this life. Using another commentary here, David Guzik, he has a good one on Job. Here's, quote, Bildad quoted the ancients, but even in ancient biblical history, they could see that there is not an easily seen correlation between righteousness and blessing. I mean, even at the beginning of time, Abel was righteous, but was rewarded with murder from his own brother Cain, end quote. Now, that really says something here. We being only born yesterday and we know nothing, Bildad is giving Job a graceful excuse for what he perceived to be his foolishness. Oh, Job, you don't know any better. You're just young. How could you know? You couldn't know any better. But this is incorrect here. Now, Job's situation, as far as Bildad is concerned, as he applies his common sense wisdom, he uses the example of the papyrus. Can the papyrus grow up without a marsh, or can reeds flourish without water? So on the Nile River and areas in that part of the world, the papyrus, those are those reeds, those green reeds that you see that shoot out of the water in the marshlands in the Nile, which again, once again, the land of Uz may have not been too far from Egypt, but no need to go over that again. He's saying that these things are required. The water, the marshland is required for this vegetation to grow up and to be healthy. And if they don't have them, then they'll wither. In fact, it withers before any other plant. And this is going to be the fact for everyone who forgets God. And this is true. Those who forget the paths of God will find themselves withered, either in this life or the next, at eternal judgment. But he's applying it here to the righteous man of Job. And the hope of the hypocrite shall be cut off. It shall perish. Whose confidence shall be cut off, and whose trust is a spider web. This should be pretty easy to understand. You don't have to live in the ancient world to get the spider's web concept. I lived in Florida, and I also lived in Rhode Island for some years, stationed in that part of the world. And in the morning, when I would walk out my house, the spiders would be so quick to design those beautiful, elegant webs that their creator designed them to do. And I'd walk smack dab into them because they're so thin and they're so light, you often couldn't see it. And the image that's being displayed here's the spider working and weaving all throughout the night to display this glorious pattern so that she can have food. And what do? We just We just whack it out of the way really quick, and it's all gone, and it's all done. And for what? And here's that illustration. That's the parallel, again, that Hebrew parallelism to the papyrus growing without the marsh, the reed that can't grow without river water, the spider's web that is just, it's here now and then boom, it's gone. Now, moving on here to the next verse, we see that this is going to be the fate of all those who forget God. He'll lean upon his house, but it won't stand. He doesn't have a strong foundation. He will hold it fast, but it will not endure. He's green right now. He's green before the sun, and his branch shoots forth. But your roots, they're not in anything deep. They're just wrapped around rocks. And when you get rooted up, the garden you came from won't even recognize you. They'll have no memory of you. Surely God will not. And verse 20 is effectively the summation of Bildad's harsh accusation against his friend Job. Surely God will not cast away a perfect man, nor will he strengthen the evildoers, until he fills your mouth with laughing and your lips with rejoicing. Job, God will not cast away a perfect man, and God has cast you away, so you must be an evildoer. You need to repent, and he'll fill your mouth with laughing, and your lips will be with rejoicing, and everyone who hates you will be clothed with shame, and the dwelling place of the wicked will come to nothing. Now, tomorrow, God willing, we'll go through where Job will respond to these harsh words of Bildad. These harsh words to his friend Bildad. And Job will cry out in one of the most well-known verses of the book of Job. Job cries out for a mediator. Now, until then, hope to see you all. Be safe. God bless you. And Maranatha.